Hello guys, this is Glenn Garcia, a teacher by profession and an avid chess player by passion. I'd like to show you one of my games here against a player named joppie325, rated 2245 here in ChessQ. So the game went e4, b6, d4, bishop b7, and he defended it with knight c3, initiating the Owen's defense. I played e6, he played bishop d3, and then I played bishop b4, pinning the knight on c3. He continued with knight g2. A lot of moves here is possible. One is knight f3 and also f4 and also queen e2. But he have chosen the knight ge2 line. So if I play bishop takes knight, he can recapture with a knight instead of a pawn, avoiding a double pawn structure on the c file. So I played knight f6. He played f3. Okay, this move here protects the pawn one more time, but in this position I think it wastes the tempo here, because eventually I'll play d5. That's what I did, and then this pawn here, because of the pressure, he will have to move it on e5, and thereby this pawn here on f3 loses its purpose and could have moved straight to f4. So instead of f3, he could have played castle kingside, and then after d5 he can play e5, knight fd7, and then f4. So after I castled, he played f4. As you can see, it's my turn to move. If he castled instead of f3, in this position he will be the one to move. So what I played was I countered his center domination by playing c5. He played a3. Okay, in this position, after c5, I was expecting bishop e3, which is more in tune with his play, and also I was also expecting pawn takes pawn here and then possibly a3. But in this position, he played a3, allowing my pawn to go to c4 and trap his bishop. Okay, it may be his opening line altogether, because of a possibility of a kingside attack here. If you notice, I have more pieces on the queen side than on the king side. It will be more clear after a few moves. After I played bishop takes knight, pawn takes bishop on c3, and I played on c4. The bishop is trapped on d3. It can go nowhere. So he sacrificed himself on h7, check, king takes h7. And after f5, he has an initiative on the king side, because the bishop here on c1 is eyeing the king side and will eventually help in the attack. The knight on e2 can jump onto g3 or f4, releasing the power of the queen, and it can swing over to the an offensive mode. So what I played is I played pawn takes pawn on f5, rook takes f5, and then pawn to g6. And I intend to switch my king here on g7 and then put my rook here on h8, defending me from invasion here on this line, on the half-open file or the half-open h file. But instead he found the best move in the position. He played bishop g5. If you notice, I cannot capture the rook because of his attack on my queen, so I move it out of the line first, and then he followed it up with rook f6. Why sacrifice the rook? Okay, one might ask. But if he simply retreats it, then I will play king g7, rook h8 without problems. So what he wanted to do was he wanted me to capture the rook on f6, so he can place his bishop here on f6 with tempo, and he only needs his queen to switch here over to the h file and give me mate on h8, or maybe place on h6 and give me mate on g7. But I defended that idea with the following moves: knight takes rook, bishop takes knight, and then rook h8. If you notice, the queen here, if it can check my king now, then I'm dead. Okay, he can capture my rook on the next move and mate me. But in this position, I'm threatening to move my king here over to g8 and um, have the rook cover the h file for me. So just in case he plays or he moves his knight on f4, like what happened in the game. Actually, I played knight d7, but I was thinking it would be better if I play king g8. But I changed my mind, since after king g8, white plays queen g4, and then threatening e6, or possibly rook e1 first and then e6. And I cannot capture an e6 because it will weaken my g6 point. And after knight takes pawn, his pieces here is gaining momentum, and the initiative would be too much for me. So what I played was I choose to move my knight on d7 so I can capture the bishop on f6. And then white played queen g4. It's always a good policy when defending to minimize, try to exchange pieces to minimize the forces invading your king. So in this manner, the possibility of producing combination would be lesser than having your opponent a lot of options or a lot of pieces to join in the fray. So what I did was I played bishop c8, covering the h3 square, and also helping my king in defending himself. So he plays queen h4 check. I played king g8. He plays queen g5. If one says, okay, it's everything is safe now, I can counter with queen b5, threatening queen b2, forking white's rook on a1 and c3, is in for a shocker because of knight takes g6. If black plays pawn takes knight, queen takes pawn check, king f8, queen g7, king e8, queen e7 mate, then I'll be the one to lose the game. But instead I played a more direct move. Instead of threatening to play queen b2, forking the rook and the pawn, I played an intermediate move here by playing queen e3 check. So I would have gained a tempo before capturing on c3. So that's what happened. He moved on h1, I captured on c3, and then he played knight takes pawn, an ultimate blunder, because I can capture the rook on a1 with check. So in this position, instead, if white could have played, let's say, rook f1, queen takes c2, queen takes d5, threatening my rook on a8, and a check here on d8, the game would still be interesting. So just in case that happened, I'm intending to follow it up with with queen f5. If he plays queen takes rook, I would simply play queen takes rook. I would simply play yeah, I'm losing at that point. Queen takes c2, queen takes d5. I plan to play, how would I meet the threat? Maybe I can move my queen over to, let's say for example, to f5. Once he captures my rook on a8, I cannot capture the knight on f4 because there's a rook there on f1. So yeah, that's not possible. Let's say for example queen takes d5. How about if I play rook b8? He plays queen d8 check, king h7, queen c7, and then bishop moves. So yeah, I would have survived. So anyway, in that position, it would still be very interesting, and he will still give a fight even though he's down a rook. Okay, So if you have some, can you help me analyze this position after, let's say for example, instead of white playing knight takes d5, rook f1, I will play queen takes c2, queen takes d5. If you can find an improvement, please put it on the comments, okay? Well, anyway, thank you for listening, and I hope you like my videos. Please click on like and subscribe. Take care, guys.